And so I remember those nights being in my room, lights off, sound off, in complete darkness, sitting there practicing how to think about nothing.
New York City is considered the center of the universe. It's a seductress, pulsating with energy. How did you find spirituality in a place like New York?
New York is a status city, it's a hardworking city, and so there's passion there. When you have both, that's the foundation for spirituality.
How does one bring that alignment in all the 7 chakras?
What about you sitting with yourself and actually working on the things you need to work on? What about you breaking down your defense mechanisms? What about you breaking down the reasons why you did certain things, your patterns, your habits? That cannot be done through meditation alone. You've got to actually sit and look in the mirror. Shiva Shakti is essentially yin and yang. When you think of yang energy, you think of action, you think of control, you think of force. And Shiva Shakti is oneness. I really do identify myself as like a true Hindu. I believe in like the abstract spiritual version of Hinduism. Hinduism is not a religion, it's a philosophy.
Right.
It is a way of being, it's a way of living, it's a way of loving, it's a way of everything.
Meri love lingo, love lingo, love lingo.
I have a personal experience that I would like to tell you about. I have never been vocal about this aspect of my life, but I feel comfortable enough to talk about it on this platform. And it is about how mantra changed my life. As a teenager, I was initiated into Kriya Yoga. There were so many distractions, and I was going through a lot of emotional, physical, psychological challenges at that point of time as a teenager. I lost touch with that practice. But during the pandemic, meditation came back into my life and I embraced it from then on. And this time I was practicing Soham meditation. And to give you a little understanding of what it is Soham meditation, where I utter the word Soham, and it's the sacred utterance of the word Soham, which is a Sanskrit word, which means I am that. Like Tattvamasi is a Sanskrit mantra in the Advaita tradition for I am that. Right, or that I am.
That I am.
And the utterance of the sacred word for days and weeks and months created a certain shift in me. And it did begin to transform me in the ways I was emoting or feeling or just understanding life from a very different perspective. Hi, this is Just Sagu.
Hi, this is Ursula Horashi.
And today's topic on Love Lingo, the podcast, is Mantra of the Monk. And to take this conversation further, we have a celestial being with us. She has come all the way from New York, and she has roots in India as well. She has embarked on this mystical journey of self-discovery and is also exploring different spiritual traditions and teachings. Saathi Roy, welcome to Love Lingo podcast. Please introduce yourself and tell us, what is your highest mantra?
Hi, everyone. My name is Saathi Roy, and thank you. Thank you for having me on this podcast. Mantra, such an important word. And I love that you asked me, what is my highest mantra? I have a company called Our Highest Mantra.
Right.
And it actually came from a true kind of death and rebirth experience.
Wow.
Where, I was working on deconstructing myself. And I've been working on that for the past, say, 6 years of my life. And at that moment, it was one of those things where all of a sudden it got to a point where it hit me. Like, there's a turning point in everyone's journey.
Right.
And there's multiple turning points that we all have in our lifetimes. This one was a particular one that really kind of showed me, okay, this is what I should be doing. What is my highest mantra? I think truly the path is you was the first things that came to mind at that point in time. So the path is you was a huge realization to me. And what that really meant was, wow, all along I was working so hard to go through all this entire journey, figure everything out, and then just to get right back to the beginning. I had to go through the journey to get back to the beginning, to then understand what it meant that the path was you. And what it means is that everything is from within, that you actually are the answer. You actually are the source. It's all within you. Everything you've ever done has been orchestrated, was all purposeful. Every single exercise and challenge that has happened was supposed to be there because it taught you ultimately are the only one that can bring you forward. You ultimately are the only one that could save you.
Wow. So the last time when we met for the first time on Zoom,
Yes.
you were in New York. We were here in Mumbai City. I was pleasantly surprised by a ritual. So the moment I switch on my iPad and I've gone into the Zoom call and I unmute my screen and I switch on the camera, I see Saathi smudging sage on the screen. And then this white cloud clears up and there appears Saathi Roy.
That's so funny.
I think that was such a beautiful gesture. I think it's kind of set a very ethereal setting for the conversation to begin, because that was the first time you were actually face to face having a conversation.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
And
I came late to that party. Would you guys mind if Sathi could grace us with sage smudging on over here on this platform at
I
Love
would
Lingo?
love to.
Saathi, here is the sage. We would love for you to smudge sage live on Love Lingo.
Wow.
Grace our Love Lingo studio with your beautiful energy and aura. And aura, absolutely.
This is a very, very special sage.
It's got lavender petals, it's got rose and marigold.
I actually always begin my meetings with sage, just clearing out the energy, because we all carry energy. Oh, and now we have beautiful roses.
Yeah.
Well, we all carry energy.
You want to pass it down to me as well?
Yes, pass it down. Let's each, well, and then let's also like kind of sage your body, right? Sage your head, because truly, if you think about it, right, like we're holding emotions, we're speaking emotions. There's all this energy that we're carrying from sleeping, from being around. Have a clear slate. So after a meeting, I'll sage. Before a meeting, I'll sage, just to clear the air. And it helps. Like, don't you feel that?
I feel amazing for you. Absolutely.
So, Sathi, I'm very interested in New York. New York City is, because we've been there. And New York City is considered the center of the universe. It's a seductress, pulsating with energy, a kaleidoscope of ideas, stimulating, right? And an equal amount of hope and disillusion coexist there. How did you find spirituality in a place like New York? I mean, I know you can find spirituality anywhere, but New York is this hard sell of hustle culture, of, just making your life, taking it to another degree. But how did you find spirituality and connect with that? That's what I'm really interested in.
That's a great question. And you're absolutely right about the energy of New York, right? Like when you land in New York, there's something so activating about the energy, and it's what is vibrating off of the people. It's what's vibrating off of the tall buildings. And you go out there and you just see all of this stuff moving and all this noise and these really high buildings and all of the significance of these buildings and all of the work that's being done in these buildings. And it's a lot of status, right? New York is a status city.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a status city. It's a hardworking city. It's not an easy city. It does not coddle you. You really have to go out there and make your name, right? That's what they say. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And it's true, because the talent level that goes there, the expectations of people are high, right? And so in order to kind of stand out or just be successful, you've got to put yourself out there quite a bit. So I think what New York taught me was heart, grit. Really? And heart. Because you learn pretty early on that if you're just working hard to work hard, that's not sustainable, right? That's what burnout. You need something else to work hard for. And New York kind of pushes that out of you, because either you stay or you get kicked out.
Leave.
Exactly.
You get kicked out or you leave, right?
Yeah, or you leave because it's not for you. You can't do it.
Because you say that, and I've been to New York a couple of times, and whenever I've been in New York, I feel great because I'm a tourist.
Yeah.
But the energy on the street is very different, and it's so palpable. I can feel disillusion walking along hope. It's almost like an oxymoron, but it does exist, right? And you can get lost in one or the other. So I'm so amazed by your journey, because you're on a spiritual path living there, and I've hardly met New Yorkers who are spiritually inclined.
So what you said there, right? With hope. You use the word hope. because you can sense that. You can sense that the people have a dream.
Yeah.
And that's like what I was referring to by heart, right? There's heart there. And so there's passion there. And I think, you know, when you have both, that's the foundation for spirituality. Now it's just about how far you take it and how far you're inclined to take it.
So if I may ask you, intrude and ask you, you were in the corporate culture for about
A decade.
and then you quit, and then
Last year.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty nice.
Then you chose another city based upon your heart guiding you, I'm thinking, because I think your heart plays a very big part in where it's going to take you ahead in life as well. You quit New York and you moved to...
So actually about that, I don't even know if I necessarily chose it. It kind of fell into place. It was 2020 around that time. And I was like, okay, yep. Talk about dissolution, right? Then, you know, the things that you're in the city for, you're not really needing to be in the city for anymore. And of course, as we all had time for reflection. Whether you were ready or not, you had time for it, right?
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
So some people took it and was like, okay, this is great. And some people had struggled a lot, right? It really depended on how much reflection you did prior to 2020 in preparation for something like that. But during that whole experience, I was like, okay, yep, it's time. It's time to open up, to look for something different. I ended up, you know, Miami opened up for me.
Wow.
Which is so interesting because I've been to Miami a lot. Anybody who's in New York, pretty much their backyard is Miami. 2-hour flight, very easy to do. Totally different, tropical, completely night and day from New York, right? You're on vacation.
Yeah.
So I've done Miami and I've always experienced the party side of it because again, back in my 20s in New York, I was also that person too. I was live at the party, going out, busy, all this stuff, right? So I was like, no, I would never move to Miami until...
Never say never, girl. You know, it takes you there, right?
100%. Until it ended up happening. But instead, you know, there's like two sides of it, similar to like Goa, I would imagine, right? There's the party side of Goa, and then you can have a sanctuary.
It's a really good analogy. With Goa and Miami, I never saw Miami as Goa. Now I do. I find my spirituality connected with the ocean. I think it does. Does it? Does it not?
Oh, yeah.
But please continue with your story, and then we'll probably discuss this further.
Absolutely. So the ocean is so connected to spirituality because the ocean, right, the element of water is the element of emotion. This is why, you know, water energy is fluid. It transforms based on if you put it into a cup or you put it into a bowl or you put it into a box or you put it. So that's water. And water was actually such a big part of my next evolution because in New York, I was still hard. I was still blocked, right? And in order to get in touch with your yin, you've got to get in touch with your water element, right?
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah.
So, you know, baths, being around water, just like, you know, all of that kind of fluid stuff, like it actually helps you in your journey as you do other practices as well. But anyways, yes, there's a total spiritual side of Miami that's much more of a sanctuary, which is how I live now.
Was there an inciting incident that took you towards spirituality? Was there a clear incident that you remember that, okay, now this is I'm going to transition, or this is what I need in life,
right?
And this is something that's missing? Or was there anything that happened to you that triggered an emotion for something else that translated into your spirituality?
I believe that spirituality is one of those things that you are forced into. Like it's one of those things that you are pushed into. You know, it is something that there's something that happens where you are like, okay, it's either this or that. Like there's no other way to go, but either I become really, really jaded with life or I become more in tune with it. So, you know, I was born into a Bengali family. So background, my roots are Bengali, but I was born in New York. So I was always around the culture and my parents never pushed religion on me ever, which is really nice. They really never did.
That's amazing.
We were Hindu, like we would go to the functions and the things that would happen and holidays, but I did my own thing, you know, again, an observer of life.
When you say you did your own thing, what does that mean?
I was always a rebel. Like I was always a rebel, truly. I was never disrespectful, but I didn't like rules for the sake of rules. Absolutely. I was so independent, you know, naturally independent spirit. I was naturally exploratory, curious. And my parents, my dad came to America because he was brought to America because of his brain. He's a genius.
Wow.
He has 2 PhDs, PhD in biophysics, astrophysics.
God, so
You know,
And they came into New York, right?
they first went to San Francisco.
Oh,
Yeah.
that connect.
70s.
I love San Francisco.
And then New York, and that's where I was born. But my dad did cancer research. So then my mom followed him over. And then they had my sister, my older sister.
Okay.
My sister was born she's 8 years older than me. And she was born actually with a lot of medical conditions. So my sister was born with a very, very, special circumstance. Like she had 40% chance of surviving birth. So right from the get-go, she's a survivor, right? She was born with 1 kidney, she had lymphedema. There's all these challenges that she was facing. And, my parents both worked really hard. They're always working. So I was really raised, like in my younger years, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, with my sister. My sister raised me. Wow. My older sister raised me, and I saw life through her eyes growing up.
wow.
So I was observing life for how life was looking at me, how I was looking at life, how life was looking at her, how she was looking at life. And, and she taught me from day one never to judge. I remember this emotion very, very, very clearly. Of the first emotion I ever really felt was the emotion of disappointment.
Wow.
Because I saw how unfair things could be.
Right.
My sister, who is this pure light, going through these challenges. Fast forward to me being 15 years old and my sister's like 23. So her 1 kidney was starting to fail. And she needed a transplant like immediately. And she had 15% of her existence left at 23 years old. And I'm like, this is the person who raised me. This is my everything, right? We were so close. Well, luckily my mom matched. So my mom, we underwent a kidney transplant surgery. It was Christmas Day. I remember it so clearly. 5 o'clock in the morning, we're going to the hospital. And we're like, praying, and by the way, my sister is the one who taught me how to pray. Wow. Yeah. And so that's really where it started. So the kidney transplant surgery happens. It's successful. So, wow, we're like very grateful. We've just given her longevity. We've literally just extended her life. And then there's a whole process that happens after surgery like that, right? There's medications.
Recovery.
There's a whole process. And one of the medications that you have to take is called an anti-rejection pill.
Okay.
Anti-rejection pill essentially means when you have a transplanted organ, you want to make sure that your body doesn't think it's an intruder and start to kill it.
Right.
You have to take it every single day for the rest of your life. Otherwise, not good, right? So she ended up having every single side effect of this medication. And this medication side effect wasn't like a headache. It was schizophrenia.
Oh.
So she went from like physically being there and we saved her physical body to all of a sudden we actually lost her. And she was put into a like true schizophrenic crisis. And we witnessed it and we had no idea it was coming. Like we were celebrating. And then all of a sudden the next day, she's seeing eyes on the walls. She's seeing dogs eating her feet. She's seeing me and she sees the devil. She sees a monster. She was scared of me because she was literally seeing other things. Because that's what schizophrenia does.
She was hallucinating.
All hallucinations. Completely traumatic. Yeah, I mean, it shut my emotions down. So that's the reason that from 15 onwards, I had a very, very blocked heart chakra. Because that disappointment firmed up into just numbing, right? So where did the spirituality take me then? Well, it's either you explode emotionally or you go and hold it in, right? Yeah. You implode it internally. I chose that route. And so I remember those nights being in my room, lights off, sound off, in complete darkness, just sitting there practicing how to think about nothing.
Wow.
How to feel nothing. My word for it at the time was, I'm going to go into my Zen state. So I called it like, I'm going to go into Zen. And I was literally like, what I was doing is kind of practicing, dissociation, actually.
Detachment?
Detachment and I was trying to bring myself outside of my body. Like I was just like, okay, let's practice like not thinking and not feeling. I want to feel nothing. Numb. I want to be numb. And so I learned how to be numb. Like from 15, 17, like that was the journey. I was very numb, very numb. That carried on into my relationships and patterns and this and that because I was very avoidant, very non-committal. I was terrified of emotionally being invested because I had this feeling of like, well, what happens tomorrow? What could happen? Somebody can just leave tomorrow.
You confront with certain emotions that you experience. And when you are in a relationship with someone, they also bring something, right? Because it's again, their energy.
Yeah.
And when you talk about numbing and you were being totally in an avoidant situation, that kind of their energy also collide and you kind of come out with a solution of how you can get out of this because it's a pattern.
Well, why would one energy go for an energy that's avoidant, right? Just like we ask, like the anxious attached, they typically go for the ones that are avoidant.
Yeah.
And then the avoidant ends up with the anxious attached, right? It's two-way situations. So again, I was imbalanced, and so I was also attracting imbalance. I was done with all of it. I was just like, okay, I need to really make sure that I'm expressing when things aren't working. Because of that blocked heart chakra, it ended up blocking my throat. In that I couldn't speak, because when you're not in touch with your emotions, how could you express your emotions?
How does one bring that alignment in all the 7 chakras? How do you bring the alignment?
So there's so many practices that people do. Like there's all sorts of practices you can do. However, there's one practice that I feel is the most important, because outside of like the Reiki healing and this and that, all these things you can do, what about you sitting with yourself and actually working on the things you need to work on? What about you breaking down your defense mechanisms? What about you breaking down the reasons why you did certain things, your patterns, your habits? That cannot be done through meditation alone. You've got to actually sit and look in the mirror. There are all these practices that you should do while you do that work, which is the real work of looking at self.
So we need to have like a cohesive work where we framework where we incorporate different elements to kind of
Keep yourself in check.
yeah. Saathi, we interact in this world, which is a physical world. It's a tangible world. We touch, we see, we feel. And if you think of it, we also call this the third dimension, which again, this is the realm of consciousness that we're talking about. We've also heard of fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. And if I remember, I happened to read a post where you spoke about it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I would love to know more about these dimensions, and if you could just take us through all the 3 dimensions.
This is actually one of my favorite topics, because I think that understanding the dimensions is a really important aspect. It's actually the journey of the human experience. You can break it down into that. So we have 3 dimensions on this plane, on this earth, right?
Right.
There are other dimensions. There are more dimensions than just 5. But for us in this vessel, we can go up to 5. So the third dimension, 3D, has to do with everything physical and mental, right? So it's like things you can touch and things you can think about. So objects, things you can see, and things like a title, identification. I'm a daughter. I'm a teacher. I'm a mother. Exactly. This is, my relationship to this is that, right? It's your relationship to things, to people, and to ideas. So it's very mental and it's very physical. That's the third.
You're very conscious of your individuality, basically.
Yes. 3D has to do with your identity in terms of like words, labels, right? When you're really thinking about your relationship to things and to people, like how you would identify, that in categories, that's a 3D, thing.
Right.
Because again, it's mental. It's like, how do you box myself into certain categories?
Right.
Then you go into 4D. 4D has to do with the energetic side of things and the emotional side of things. So you move from 3D, which is what you can see and what you can touch and what you can think about, to what you cannot see, right? Which is energy, but what you can feel, which is your emotions. So 4D has to do with your energetic and emotional relationship to things, to people, to ideas. So love, pain, right? That's 4D. Self-discovery is something that happens in 4D, because when you're starting to understand yourself, you're starting to understand your, that you're going through an emotional process and an energetic process. In the 4D state, you kind of understand that there's all these different ways that things can go. You understand that energy exists. You understand, all of these things. And that's where most people are. Most people are in, somewhere in that kind of 4D state of being.
Right.
4D also has to do with duality. So duality means, again, different emotions. You understand that there's one side and the other side.
Right.
So 5D has to do with oneness. It's where you go from this or that to this and that to this and or that or neither.
So it's a state of being. It's actually a state of being you embody.
It's non-duality. Right. 5D is non-duality. Non-duality is when you go from two halves to one. That's 5D, is when you realize how every side actually connects to each other. We go back to kind of yin and yang energy, because to me, yin energy is inherently spiritual. Spirituality to me is yin. It's a yin energy, because in order to get your spiritual downloads, you have to be in yin. You have to be still. You have to work. You have to go inwards. Yin is inwards.
Right.
And it takes yang to get there. Because think about it this way. When you think of yang energy, you think of action, you think of control, you think of force, right? And when you think of yin, you think of the opposite, stillness. But how much force does it take for somebody to be still? How much discipline does it take to be still? It takes a lot of self-control.
Powerhouse.
A lot of power, a lot of discipline to be still. Wow. So it takes yang to be yin. You right? And when you're in your yin, you can get these downloads, these messages, these creative visions, right? And then your yang has to act on it and take it forward.
Like Shiva Shakti that you mentioned earlier, like when you were talking earlier, does that
Shiva Shakti is essentially yin and yang, right? Shiva Shakti is oneness.
Oneness.
Shiva Shakti is a beautiful example of both energies being at play and being one.
How does one maintain personal autonomy when they're pursuing their spiritual path?
So, interesting question. Really, really interesting question, because I have an interesting take on that, which is some people, this is why we talk about religion and spirituality. Some people need something that's a bit more structured.
Right.
In order for them to pursue or practice spiritual, practices, right? They need to go to a church. They need to go to the temple. They need to do certain things, right? They need to follow a certain leader, for a certain guru.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that path, but it is a different path. And I will say this, like, it is possible to have a spiritual experience in a religious setting. Like, I know many people that have gone to churches and have felt God and have had all these beautiful things happen to them. I've seen it. I've heard about it. I trust it because I can feel it from them. To them, that is their truth. Therefore, to them, it is real. And for us, we have a different truth. We have a different real, right? And so we go back to, perception, and everyone has a different way of practicing their spirituality. However, I acknowledge that there are different mediums and ways that people can practice. And if you choose to go down that certain path, that's wonderful. We're not different. We both are spiritual. You just choose to do it from that end. Right. And I choose to do it from this end. And we can both agree that we love, like, we're like in oneness, right? As long as we can agree in oneness and you don't believe that like anybody outside of your faith is a good human, right? Like if you're the say like only Muslims, only Hindus, only Christians, obviously that we don't jive, like, but if we can come together and practice different practices together, I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Powerful. All the beautiful people who get easily offended, we're not trying to say that spirituality is better than religion. We're just trying to talk about what resonates with us in the most harmonious way and have a conversation that doesn't feel intellectual or is intellectual, but is something that coalesces our union and transcends it. If it resonates with you, it does. If it doesn't, I'm sorry. but we're just talking about our lives and what matters to us at this point of time. India is a reservoir of spiritual knowledge and wisdom. Ancient Indian texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, Vedas, and the Upanishads not only teach us morality and values, but also awaken in us a realm of spirituality. Do you think us being Indian, like all of us are, I mean, our roots probably, has something to do with this connect that we have with our country and our spirituality?
Absolutely. I 100%. I think that, I mean, our roots are so ancient and they're so sacred, and there's so many, I mean, there's an infinite amount of knowledge and wisdom that's just stored in our DNA, right? Have you ever heard of epigenetics?
Yes, of course.
So epigenetics, I mean, it says like in our DNA, we have all these codes, all this memory. We have all this memory that's like in our DNA, that's in our coding from like 15 to 20 generations ago. That's a real fact. You know, science has proven that. So what that means is like we're carrying a lot, a lot of things. So that also means that there's things that within us that can be activated. I do believe that because of our roots, especially being Indian, I mean, I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it.
Privilege.
It's a privilege.
It's such an honor.
It's an honor.
Truly. I really do identify myself as like a true Hindu. Like I do. Like in that, I believe in like the abstract spiritual version of Hinduism. And I do believe that, of course, culture and times change and things happen and politics gets into the play, and it really warps the true essence of Hinduism, which truly is the most open-minded, most really philosophy. Again, it's a philosophy, right? If we remember, Hinduism is not a religion, it's a philosophy.
Right.
It is a way of being, it's a way of living, it's a way of loving, it's a way of everything, of just how you treat people. If you believe in karma, then you're a Hindu, right?
All the other religions in the world have caused a lot of deaths and wars.
Right.
And the land of India and the land where Hinduism reigns here, they have never gone to another country, invaded in and asked them to convert.
And the reason is because of the conversion. You just said it. In other religions, there's an award for converting somebody into their religion.
Right.
In Hinduism,
Karmic award.
yeah,
As a reward, karmically you will be rewarded.
there's all these rewards, so you're actually incentivized to go and convert people.
Right.
Where Hinduism, you cannot actually convert into it.
Right.
You can practice it.
Right.
But you cannot convert into
Right.
it.
Right.
You are actually born into it, or you can practice it.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. And so that's why, inherently, like true Hinduism, you know, that is not political, is non-judgmental, is completely inclusive, universal, and that's what I believe in.
Saathi, you mentioned your interest in bridging the East and the West, and you want to bring these educational seminars to the universities here in India. So you basically want to bring spirituality in the academics for students here. Could you please throw some light on that and tell us what are your plans?
India is very important to me, not only because it's roots and it's home, but I've always had this feeling within me that you've got to give back, right? You've got to give back. One of the things that's really important to me is sharing these kinds of conversations with people, right? Exactly what we're doing, I think, is so important, just to speak about the human experience, the ways that it can manifest. How, yeah, I just think that it's so important to showcase different types of realities for people. Of course, I was Indian, but born in the U.S., and I'm very Western in many ways, but I also have such a strong Eastern foundation and values within me. Indian culture, whether you're born in the U.S. or born in India, Indian culture is Indian culture, right?
Yeah, I guess we all agree on that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a repression, there's a suppression, there's a identity crisis, there's a culture crisis, there's a confusion. You know, and I think that now is truly the opportunity for us to come together and to bring some of the beautiful things from the West, to bring it to help more people in India express more, share more, challenge more, right? Become curious. And then also, same with the vice versa, right? Some beautiful traditions and values and systems from the Eastern side to bring into the West that the West already like really truly loves the Eastern side.
Right.
That they've made it pretty clear they really love Eastern side, and I think that bringing more, it's important for an Indian to represent the Eastern side in the West.
I agree with you.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree
There's
with
a
you
lot
more.
Are a great representation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That
I
means a
feel
lot.
that strongly.
Yeah.
I feel that you're the right kind of mix that probably India needs and probably the world needs to represent our Eastern values with a very coherent message also from the West. You know, that's a very powerful message going out there of non-duality. Again,
Right.
You'll bridge that gap. And I think you'll do a great job at it.
I really appreciate that because that is important to me.
Saathi, before wrapping up, we would love to know if there's a book from your childhood that has stayed with you over the years and has shaped your perspective.
Yes, actually. Like there's a lot of books that come to mind, but one that I really loved as a child, and I really resonated with it. I really resonated with it because I felt like I resonated with the character in the book.
Okay.
I felt like the character, the archetype of the character of the book, like really spoke to me, and that's Great Gatsby.
I love
Wow.
that book.
Yeah. What I love about Great Gatsby. Oh, and actually, I brought the book.
Do you want to?
Yeah. Okay. Oh wow, yeah. I Great Gatsby has truly been I feel like it was a special part of my journey when I read it, because what's so cool about this book is that I feel like it touches upon a lot of things, right?
Okay.
Like wealth and power and all of this stuff. I felt a connection to the character because I always felt very deep, very eternal. I always had this like lover archetype within me, but it was so closed because of disappointment, because of all these other things, right?
When I read this book and something stayed with me forever, those are the last lines of the book. And I think prose-wise, I think a lot of writers in the world and a lot of literary critics also would agree on this, has the best closing lines. And so we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. I think Scott Fitzgerald had he died very young, but these lines have immortalized prose in writers' minds, and I think these are one of the most beautiful lines ever written.
I have chills just
Yeah.
from you saying
And I love this book too.
So The Great Gatsby is going to go into our library through our foundation Evolve, Every Voice on Love. We want to impact underprivileged children by fostering the love for reading and nurturing their imagination. So thank you, Saathi, for being here.
Love,
and
Lingo me love.
sharing your stories and experiences. And this conversation has been so insightful and enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching the Love Lingo podcast. It's been an absolute honor being here, and I hope that there's something that you've taken away from it.
And follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your audio streaming. Thank you for watching us on another episode of Love Lingo, Hum Hai Rahi Pyar Ke.
ढूंढे राबता, दुनिया कहती हम अलग है, हमको इससे क्या, हम है राही प्यार के, ढूंढे रहनुमा, पल में जी के देख ले तू, कल का क्या पता, लाए थे